I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, sitting at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen while my heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Jenna for 6 years. We met in college and quickly fell in love, or at least that's how I thought it was. Jenna has always been the social butterfly, the one everyone loves. She's charming, witty, and has this uncanny ability to make you feel special. But looking back, I realize I should have seen the signs that things were off. Over the last few months, Jenna had become distant. There were late nights at work, extra meetings, and her phone constantly buzzing with notifications. At first, I brushed it off as her being dedicated to her job. She works in diversity recruitment, and I knew how much she cared about her work. Still, there was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind, the kind that whispers, something isn't right. I tried to talk to her about it. I'd ask her how her day was or if she wanted to have dinner together, but I usually got a distracted smile and a half-hearted response. It was like I was talking to a wall. I'd catch glimpses of her texting in another room, a smile creeping onto her face that felt more like a dagger in my chest than a sign of happiness. But every time I confronted her, Jenna would roll her eyes and say I was being paranoid. "You know how it is, Mark. Work is stressful," she'd say, dismissing my concerns. Then one evening, everything changed. I came home early from work, hoping to surprise her with dinner. I walked into the living room and saw her phone sitting on the coffee table, screen lit up with a message notification. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the better of me. The message wasn't from a coworker, it was from a guy named Tom. "I can't wait to see you tonight. Just us, no more hiding," it read. My heart dropped into my stomach. What the hell was going on? I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I picked up the phone, my hands shaking, and scrolled through her messages. The more I read, the more I realized I was reading a sick love story, daring rendezvous, sweet nothings, and promises of intimacy. Jenna had been cheating on me. It felt like my world was crumbling around me, and I was powerless to stop it. I dropped the phone back onto the table and took a few deep breaths, trying to wrap my mind around what I had just discovered. I knew I had to confront her, but I also felt a sudden urge to keep it together, to be calm, cool, and collected. I needed her to know I wasn't going to crumble. So I decided to wait for her to come home. When Jenna finally walked through the door, she was all smiles, a little too bright for my liking. She walked over, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and asked about my day. I could barely keep it together. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but full of tension. She furrowed her brows, picking up on my serious tone, and sat down beside me. "What's wrong?" she asked, and I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes, but I wasn't ready to let her off easy. "Is Tom your new best friend?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. The shock on her face was palpable, confusion furrowing her brow. "What are you talking about?" she replied, her voice laced with feigned innocence. I pulled her phone from my pocket and tossed it in her lap, her messages still fresh in my mind. You've been hiding this from me. How long has it been going on?" Jenna's expression changed, shifting from confusion to a defensive anger. She crossed her arms, her voice rising as she began to make excuses. "It's not what you think, Mark. He's just a colleague. We've been working on a project together." But I could tell she was lying. I could see the cracks in her facade. "Don't lie to me, Jenna. I just read everything. I know what's happening, and I deserve the truth," I insisted, my heart racing. She sighed, the anger fading to a weary resignation. "Okay, fine. It's not just work. We've gotten close. Close." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. How could she do this to us? It was a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, disbelief, and an almost crushing sadness. In that moment, I knew my life was about to change forever, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. As Jenna tried to explain herself, I felt like I was watching a car crash in slow motion, horrified but unable to look away. Each word she spoke only twisted the knife deeper. "You don't understand, Mark. Tom and I connected in ways that we haven't in years. You've been so caught up in your own work lately. I felt lonely," she said, her voice a mix of regret and justification. "Lonely. I worked long hours to provide for us, to build a life together. I thought we were a team." My mind spun as I tried to process her words. "So cheating on your husband was the answer. You couldn't just talk to me." I shot back, my voice rising. Jenna opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she looked away, her eyes shifting to the floor. It felt like an admission of guilt more than anything else. "I didn't want to hurt you," she finally mumbled, but it felt hollow. The betrayal hit me with a wave of anger and sadness. My mind was racing. I thought about all the moments we'd shared, the dreams we'd built together, and it felt like they were crumbling before my eyes. I wanted to scream, throw things, but I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "Jenna, do you even realize what this means? It's not just a fling or a mistake. You chose to betray our marriage vows," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes welled up with tears, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the secrets. "I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said, her voice breaking, but I wasn't having any of it. "Sorry isn't enough. You don't get to just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. What you've done is unforgivable," I said, my voice firm. We went back and forth for what felt like hours. She tried to explain how Tom filled a void, how she felt appreciated and desired. I listened, but it only fueled my anger. "You think this is about me not being there? What about my feelings? What about our relationship?" As the reality of the situation settled in, I realized that this wasn't just a moment of anger, it was a reckoning. I couldn't trust her anymore, and that realization was suffocating. I stood up and started pacing the room, my mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. Jenna watched me with wide eyes, her expression shifting from defensive to desperate. "Please, Mark. We can work through this. It was a mistake. It doesn't mean I don't love you," she pleaded. "Love." The word felt like a hollow echo in the air. "Love doesn't just disappear, Jenna. You made a choice." "That's the difference," I replied, looking her straight in the eye. In that moment, I felt like I was standing in the middle of a storm, and I had to make a choice: confront the chaos or find a way to rebuild from the wreckage. I needed time to think, to plan my next move. I decided to leave the house for a while, to clear my head. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Jenna called after me, panic lacing her voice. "I don't know, but I can't stay here right now," I responded, walking out into the cool evening air. I felt raw and exposed, like a wound that had just been opened. As I drove aimlessly, I felt the weight of betrayal crushing me. I should have felt angry at her, and I was, but more than anything, I felt a profound sense of loss. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the life we'd built together collapsing like a house of cards. I couldn't escape the thoughts that kept swirling in my head. How could she do this? Did she ever really love me? I pulled over to a quiet park, shutting off the engine and letting the silence engulf me. I rested my head against the steering wheel, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. It felt absurd that I was crying over someone who had betrayed me so deeply. But the truth was, I loved her. I loved the woman I thought she was. I sat there for a long time, wrestling with my emotions. I knew I had a decision to make. I could confront this head-on and figure out how to move forward, or I could retreat into anger and hurt. As the minutes passed, I felt a determination settle in. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me or our relationship without a fight. A plan began to form in my mind. I realized if she could betray our marriage, then I had to make sure I was holding her accountable for her actions. If inclusion was about making everyone feel welcome, then equity had to include standards in our relationship too. I would build the boundaries we needed to either heal this or end it for good. But first, I needed to think about how to confront Jenna again, this time with a clear head and a solid plan. The chaos inside me began to quiet, replaced with a focused resolve. I would make my next steps count, whatever the outcome. After spending a couple of hours in the park, I finally decided to head home. The weight of uncertainty lingered, but I felt somewhat more composed. I had spent too long letting Jenna's choices control my feelings, and it was time to take back that control. I needed to confront her again, but this time I would do it on my terms. Walking through the front door, I found Jenna sitting on the couch, her expression a mix of worry and guilt. Her eyes were red from crying, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy again, but I quickly snuffed it out. I couldn't allow myself to get sucked back into her emotional whirlpool so easily. "Mark," she started, her voice shaky. "I've been thinking and I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for what I did. I want to fix this." I held up my hand, cutting her off before she could spiral into another round of excuses. "Jenna, I don't want to hear more apologies right now. I need to be straightforward about what happened and what needs to happen moving forward." She nodded, biting her lip, and I could tell she was bracing for what was coming. I took a deep breath and began laying out my thoughts, trying to stay calm. "This isn't just about you saying you're sorry. This is about trust, and you've shattered it. I don't feel safe in this relationship anymore. You need to understand that." "Mark, I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted to break your trust," she replied, her voice rising in desperation. "Then why did you?" I shot back, my patience wearing thin. "You had options. You could have talked to me, you could have mentioned that you were feeling lonely, but you chose to cheat instead." Jenna looked down, sadness etched across her face. "I know and I regret it, I truly do. Tom was. He was just easier to talk to at that moment. I didn't plan for this to happen," she said, searching my eyes for understanding. "Easier." The word struck me like a slap. "Is that what our marriage has come down to? You chose someone who was easier over your own husband. It feels like you didn't even think about what this would do to us." "I was stupid, Mark. I was caught up in everything," she replied, frustration creeping into her voice. "I thought it was just what I needed to feel better about myself." "You thought? Wow, that's a comforting thought. You didn't just think of yourself. You thought of your own needs above our marriage. I'm not okay with that." Jenna went quiet and the silence hung heavily between us. I could see the realization slowly dawning on her, that this wasn't just a fleeting moment of anger, it was the beginning of something much larger. "I don't want to lose you," she finally said, her voice low and trembling. "I want to do whatever it takes to make it right. Fixing this won't happen overnight." "I need you to understand that," I replied, my voice steady but stern. "This isn't about just talking it out. It's about rebuilding trust, and that takes time and boundaries." She nodded slowly, the fight visibly leaving her. I could tell she was starting to grasp the gravity of the situation. "What do you mean by boundaries?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean that we need to lay down some ground rules if we're going to make this work," I said, crossing my arms. "I need to know you're committed to fixing this. That means no contact with Tom. You need to cut him out of your life completely. If you want to rebuild this marriage, you need to be transparent with me. No more secrets." Her eyes widened at the idea of cutting Tom out completely, but she nodded. "Okay, I can do that. I'll block him, I promise." I pressed on, determined to establish a solid foundation for any future conversations. "Also, we need to talk about counseling. I think we should see a therapist, together and individually. I need to understand why you made that choice, and you need to explore what led you to it." "I'll do whatever it takes, Mark. I promise I'll try," she said, her voice cracking. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I knew it would take a lot more than promises to heal what was broken. "This is just the beginning, Jenna. I need time to process everything, and I need to see actions, not just hear words." She nodded again, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. I'll do anything. I just don't want to lose you." "Losing me was your choice," I said firmly, keeping my emotions in check as I turned away from her. I needed to remain strong. "But if we're going to move forward, you need to show me that you're serious about making changes." Jenna fell silent, and the reality of the moment settled in. I could feel tension hanging heavy in the air, a mix of unresolved emotions swirling around us. I didn't know if we could recover from this, but I knew I wasn't ready to give up just yet. I wanted to believe in the possibility of healing, but I also knew that it would be a long road ahead. As I paced around the room, I made a mental note to focus on my own needs too. I needed to be strong, both for myself and for the marriage I wanted to salvage. I would not just be a passive participant in my own life. And while the thought of reconciling with Jenna felt like a mountain to climb, I was determined to take those first steps toward healing. But I also knew that I had to keep my heart guarded for now. Trust, once broken, wasn't easily mended. I'd have to approach this with caution and ensure that accountability became the cornerstone of our relationship moving forward. As I stood there, I felt a spark of hope amid the turmoil. If we could navigate this with honesty and commitment, Perhaps we could rebuild something even stronger than before. But only time would tell if we could weather this storm. The days following our confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. I wasn't sure if I was coming or going, but I knew one thing. I needed to keep my head above water. Jenna had blocked Tom on her phone, and she was trying to make an effort to be more present. However, every time she reached for her phone, I felt a pang of anxiety. Would she really stick to her word? Would she truly cut him out of her life? We started attending couples therapy, which was a mixed bag. It felt like an emotional roller coaster. Our therapist, Dr. Stevens, was compassionate yet direct, and I appreciated that. She encouraged us to express our feelings openly, but each session felt like peeling back layers of an onion, painful but necessary. In our first session, I laid it all out. I don't know how to trust Jenna again. How do I move past the betrayal? I asked, my voice thick with frustration. Dr. Stevens nodded, her expression understanding. Building trust is a process. It requires transparency, communication, and accountability from both partners. Jenna, what steps are you taking to show Mark that you're committed to this relationship? Jenna looked at me, her eyes filled with remorse. I'm trying to be more open. I've told my friends what happened, and I've cut off communication with Tom. I want to focus on rebuilding my relationship with Mark, not just saying I'm sorry. Dr. Stevens leaned forward, her hands clasped. That's a great start, Jenna. But Mark, how do you feel about her actions? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I appreciate that she's trying, but it's hard to shake off the feeling of betrayal. I want to believe her, but I need to see that she's really committed to working on this. Jenna nodded, and the session continued with Dr. Stevens guiding us through exercises designed to foster communication and understanding. As the sessions progressed, I began to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with. Jenna was making an effort, and I started to feel a flicker of hope, but then setbacks came crashing in. One evening, I came home from work and found Jenna on the couch, deep in conversation on her phone. My heart raced as I caught a glimpse of her smiling, laughing. The moment she hung up, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. Who was that? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It was just Sarah, my friend, she replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her tone. Just a friend. It didn't look that way, I shot back, my frustration boiling over. I thought we agreed to transparency. What part of that includes hiding conversations? Mark, you're being unreasonable. She snapped, her own frustration rising. I'm not cheating on you, I'm just talking to a friend. You can't expect me to stop talking to everyone I know. Well, it sure feels like you're still hiding things. I replied, my temper flaring. We ended up in a heated argument that night, the kind that left both of us drained and on edge. It was during moments like these that I felt the full weight of what had happened. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, and I was still reeling from the initial shock of her infidelity. The intensity of our arguments made me question whether we were truly making progress or if we were simply stuck in a cycle of pain and resentment. Despite all the promises and attempts at transparency, I felt like I was walking on eggshells, unsure of every step I took. In therapy, we discussed our fights, and Dr. Stevens encouraged us to express our needs and frustrations without attacking each other. Mark, how do you think you can communicate your feelings without triggering Jenna's defensiveness? She asked during one session. I took a moment to think. I guess I could try to be more specific about how I feel instead of making accusations, I replied slowly. It's just hard when I feel insecure. Exactly, Dr. Stevens nodded. Jenna, how does that resonate with you? What can you do to help Mark feel more secure? I can try to be more open with my communication about who I'm talking to, even if it's just friends, Jenna said softly, glancing at me. The therapy sessions served as a reminder that we were in this together, but every step forward felt like it was met with two steps back. I found myself oscillating between hope and despair. One moment, I'd feel optimistic about our progress, and the next, I'd be engulfed in jealousy and fear of the unknown. By the time a few weeks had passed, I started to find my footing again. I began focusing on my own interests, taking time to reconnect with friends and hobbies I had neglected. I realized I needed to prioritize my own happiness and well-being, regardless of where my relationship with Jenna would end up. One evening, I met up with my friend Tom. Yes, not the same Tom, but a different one. We grabbed drinks and talked about everything that had been happening. "Man, I'm really sorry to hear about you and Jenna. That's rough," he said, shaking his head. "Yeah, it's been a tough road, but I'm learning a lot about myself through all this," I replied, taking a sip of my beer. "Good for you. Just remember you deserve to be happy, whether that's with her or on your own," he said. His words stuck with me, and I realized that regardless of how I felt about Jenna, my happiness couldn't solely depend on her actions. When I returned home that night, Jenna was waiting for me, her face lit up with a smile. "Hey, how was your night?" she asked, her eyes bright. "It was good," I said casually, trying to gauge her mood. "Just caught up with Tom for drinks." "Oh, that's nice," she replied, but I could sense the tension beneath her surface. "Did you talk about us?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to share. "A bit, but I mostly focused on my own stuff. It's important for me to have my own space too," I said, choosing my words carefully. She nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "I get that. I want you to feel good about yourself, you know. I don't want to be the reason you feel trapped or unhappy." It was a small moment, but it felt significant. Maybe we were starting to understand each other in a way we hadn't before. Maybe there was still a chance for us, as long as we both stayed committed to the process and worked through our individual issues together. The road to healing was long, but I was willing to walk it if Jenna was too. But I also knew that I had to be prepared for any outcome. Rebuilding would take more than just promises. It would require concrete actions and a commitment to change from both of us. As I climbed into bed that night, I felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. But at the very least, I knew I was finally taking steps to regain my own footing, no matter where this journey took me. The weeks continued to roll by, and life began to settle into a fragile routine. Jenna was making genuine efforts to show accountability, but trust was a hard thing to rebuild. Every time we sat down for dinner, and I caught her glancing at her phone, my heart raced. I was still afraid she might slip back into old habits, despite her assurances that she was committed to our marriage. Our therapy sessions became a lifeline. Dr. Stevens guided us through the ups and downs, helping us navigate the murky waters of trust and communication. Jenna was doing her best to be open and transparent, but I still found myself wrestling with moments of doubt, and it made me question everything all over again. One evening during our session, Dr. Stevens asked us to talk about what trust meant to each of us. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the conversation. For me, trust means knowing that my partner is reliable and that I can count on them to be honest, not just with their words but through their actions, I said, my voice steady. Jenna nodded, her expression serious. "I understand. I know that I've broken that trust and I'm trying to earn it back. I want you to feel safe with me again," she replied, her tone sincere. We continued to discuss our feelings, and Jenna shared how guilty she felt about her choices. "I know it sounds like an excuse, but I thought I was somehow protecting us by not bringing my feelings of loneliness to the table. I thought it was just a phase," she admitted. Dr. Stevens nodded, encouraging her to go deeper. "What do you think led you to feel like you couldn't express that to Mark?" Jenna took a deep breath, her brow furrowed. "I guess I didn't want to seem weak. I thought I could handle it on my own, and then it spiraled out of control. I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was tangled with the anger that still lingered. But that's the thing, Jenna. Relationships don't work when one person tries to shoulder everything alone. We're supposed to be a team. I need you to remember that," I said, my voice firm but calm. The discussion was productive, but afterward I found myself feeling both lighter and heavier. I understood that this was a journey, but I still had moments of doubt. I was still wrestling with my emotions and what the future held for us. One night, I decided to take a step back from our routine. I needed some time to think. I grabbed my notebook and went to my favorite coffee shop, looking to clear my head. As I sipped my drink, I jotted down my thoughts, trying to make sense of everything. I wrote about my feelings of betrayal, how they had shaken my sense of self and my belief in our marriage. But I also began to write about the positives, the efforts Jenna was making, her willingness to go to therapy, and how much I wanted to believe in her again. The quiet of the coffee shop allowed me to reflect deeply. I wondered if it was possible to rebuild something stronger than what we had before. I had invested so much into our marriage, and part of me yearned for the connection we once shared. After about an hour, I closed my notebook, feeling somewhat lighter. As I walked back to my car, I decided to text Jenna. "Let's go for a walk when I get home. I want to talk." When I arrived home, Jenna was waiting for me at the door, her expression curious and hopeful. We set off down our street, the evening air crisp and invigorating. "Everything okay?" she asked, glancing at me. "Yeah, I just wanted to talk," I replied, my heart racing as I gathered my thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about us and what this whole experience means. I want to be honest with you." She nodded, her eyes attentive. "I'm ready to hear it." We walked in silence for a moment, the sounds of our footsteps mingling with the distant rustle of leaves. "I've been reflecting on everything, and I see that you're trying," I began. "But I also realize I need to be clear about my feelings moving forward. It's not enough to just say you want to change. I need to see it in action." "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "I want to show you that I'm committed to making this work. What do you need from me?" I took a deep breath, knowing this was my chance to lay things out clearly. "I need you to continue being open about your feelings and keep the lines of communication clear. If something is bothering you, I want you to come to me instead of bottling it up. We need to rebuild trust through consistent actions, not just words." Jenna nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I can do that. I want to be here for you, and I want you to feel safe sharing how you feel." "Good," I replied, feeling a bit of the weight lift off my shoulders. "And I also need to be honest about my feelings. There are still moments where I feel insecure, and I might lash out or get jealous. I don't want that to become a cycle. I want us to work through it together." "Thank you for being honest, Mark," she said softly. "I appreciate that. I'll do my best to keep communicating even when it's hard." We continued to walk, the conversation shifting to our hopes for the future. I felt a flicker of optimism as we talked about our dreams and aspirations. If we could navigate through this, there might still be a future worth fighting for. But then the following week, I received an unexpected text from an unknown number. It simply read, "Just wanted to check in on you. Hope you're doing okay." My heart dropped. Who was this? I immediately thought it might be Tom, and my mind went into overdrive. I felt the familiar sense of dread creeping in, and I needed to know what was going on. I confronted Jenna about the text that evening. "I got a strange message today from someone I don't recognize. It felt off." She looked perplexed. "Who was it? What did it say?" "It just said they were checking in on me. It felt like something from Tom." I replied, trying to keep my tone even. Jenna's expression changed, and I could see the panic wash over her face. "I swear it wasn't me. I cut ties with him, I promise." "Yeah, but how do I know that's really true?" I shot back, the anger bubbling up again. "You promised me transparency, and now I'm getting this random message. It feels like there's still something you're not telling me." "Mark, please, I'm not lying," Jenna pleaded, her eyes wide with distress. "I had a conversation with Tom after I blocked him, but it was just about work. I told him I was done with all of that." The back and forth intensified, and I felt my heart racing with frustration. "So you're saying he just texted you out of the blue to check on me? That doesn't add up, Jenna. I need to know you're committed to this, and it feels like this is just another lie." As the argument escalated, I felt like we were back at square one. I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still secrets lurking beneath the surface. Maybe the foundation we were trying to rebuild was more fragile than I thought. I walked away from the conversation, my heart heavy with uncertainty. I needed to step back and gather my thoughts again. The trust we were trying to build felt like it was slipping through our fingers, and I didn't know how to hold on. Everything was at a tipping point, and I could feel the storm brewing. I didn't just want to confront the chaos. I needed to face it head-on and find a way to reclaim my peace. But where we went from here was uncertain, and I feared that the path we were on could lead to even more heartbreak. The following days were a blur of tension and uncertainty. Jenna and I barely spoke after that last argument. Every time we tried to engage in conversation, it felt like we were walking through a minefield. I could sense the weight of unresolved feelings hanging heavy between us, like a storm cloud that threatened to burst at any moment. After a few days of silence, I finally decided I needed to confront Jenna again. I couldn't let this festering wound go untreated. We were sitting across from each other at the kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken words. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. Jenna, I'm still feeling uneasy about everything. That text from the unknown number is still bothering me, and I can't shake the feeling that there's something you're not telling me. Jenna's eyes widened and she shook her head. I promise I haven't spoken to Tom since I blocked him. I told you, I'm trying to be open with you. Then why are we still on this roller coaster of emotions? I'm losing my mind here. I replied, feeling my frustration boil over. Every time I feel like we're making progress, something else comes up that makes me question everything again. I know I need to trust you, but it's so hard. I get it, I really do, but I can't change the past, Mark. I'm doing everything I can to prove myself to you, Jenna said, her voice cracking with emotion. This isn't easy for me either. I'm terrified of losing you. Her vulnerability hit me hard. I could see the pain in her eyes, and for a moment I softened. I don't want to lose you either, Jenna, but we need to find a way to navigate through this together. I can't keep feeling like I'm in a constant state of uncertainty. I know what you're saying. I'll reach out to the therapist and see if we can get more sessions scheduled. Maybe we need to dig deeper into these feelings, she suggested, her voice more determined. That night, I found myself lying in bed wide awake, reflecting on everything we had been through. I realized that if I truly wanted to move forward, I had to confront my own insecurities head-on. I couldn't let the fear of betrayal control my life any longer. If we were going to rebuild, it would take effort from both of us. The following week, we had another therapy session scheduled. Dr. Stevens guided us through a deep dive into our emotions. Mark, you've expressed feelings of insecurity, and Jenna, you've mentioned your struggles with communication. How do you think you can support each other in these areas? She asked, her tone encouraging. I looked at Jenna, feeling the weight of the moment. I think I need to find ways to express my feelings without blaming you. I need to communicate better when I'm feeling insecure instead of letting it build up, I said, feeling a sense of vulnerability wash over me. And I need to be honest about my feelings too, even when it's hard. I have to keep you in the loop with everything so you always know what's going on, Jenna added, her tone sincere. Dr. Stevens nodded. Excellent. It sounds like you both are committed to working on this together. It's not going to be a quick fix, but each step you take will help rebuild that trust. As we left the session, I felt a renewed sense of hope. It was a long road ahead, but we were finally on the same page. I realized that rebuilding trust would require patience, open communication, and vulnerability. I had to let go of my fear and meet Jenna halfway. A few days later, I decided to take a leap of faith. I approached Jenna one evening after dinner. I've been thinking about us, and I want to give this a real shot. I want to move forward together, and I believe we can make it work if we both commit to the process. Her eyes brightened and she smiled. Really, you mean that? I nodded. Yes, but we need to be diligent about keeping our promises and staying transparent. I don't want to feel like I'm second-guessing everything anymore. Jenna reached out and took my hand, squeezing it tightly. I won't let you down, I'm all in. From that point on, everything began to shift. Jenna was more communicative about her feelings, and I made efforts to express my insecurities without letting them spiral out of control. We both started to see a therapist more regularly, and it became a safe space for us to explore our emotions and address any lingering fears. As the weeks turned into months, I started to notice changes. The tension that had once filled our home began to dissipate. We laughed more, connected more, and slowly but surely, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble. Was it a magic fix? Of course not. There were still moments of doubt and fear, but they felt manageable. We learned to navigate those moments together, and I started to feel the trust slowly rebuilding. I could see Jenna's commitment to our marriage and her determination to make things right. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to Jenna. You know, I think we're starting to rebuild something really special here. It's not the same as before, but I think it's becoming even stronger. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. I feel that too. I'm so thankful we're on this journey together. I love you, Mark. I love you too, Jenna, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes us. Reflecting on everything we had been through, I realized that while betrayal was painful, it could also serve as a catalyst for growth. I learned that relationships require work, honesty, and vulnerability. I also learned that love doesn't always come easy, but it's worth fighting for when it's genuine. So, to anyone out there facing a similar situation, know that it's possible to rebuild, even when it feels impossible. It requires commitment from both partners and a willingness to confront difficult emotions. But in the end, if you're both willing to put in the work, you may just discover a deeper connection that you never thought possible.